Let's go!
Everybody big hates Street Fighter 6 right now, so we did it. We came full circle. We did 2 circles. We got to the point where 3 to 6 months after Street Fighter 6 was out, everyone hated Street Fighter 6, it seemed, and everyone was super vocal about it. And then Akuma came out, and Bison came out, and, you know, Terry came out, and all that stuff started happening, so everyone got big happy. The majority of 2024 was full of a lot of people praising and platforming Street Fighter 6 as the greatest thing since, like, sliced bread, which it, in my opinion, absolutely deserves. But ultimately, those things only last so long. So what's happening right now is a majority of, like, top-level competitors, some that got into Street Fighter around the Street Fighter 5 era and got really good at the game since then, and some tournaments, well, I think it's one tournament in Japan was effectively held that was a Street Fighter 5 tournament to go back and play like Street Fighter 5, which is completely fine. And now there is a narrative building that Street Fighter 5 was way better than Street Fighter 6. And I get it. Street Fighter 6 is boring. I've seen that sentiment a lot. Trust me, dude, you'd be saying the same thing about every other fighting game that is not the first fighting game you ever got into. You are never going to find another fighting game that will be able to capture the magic of your first fighting games, the one that you commit to, the ones that you get really good at. You will never be able to recapture that. And I think you just need to accept that. The narrative that's going on right now that is trying to be propagated is that, yeah, it's not just new thing is bad. It's mostly just, and this is a story as old as time, elevate the thing that was before it to new heights. Where it's like, oh, actually the old thing is way better than the new thing, which is also, you know, tale as old as time. But what I want to do is just for the Street Fighter series, kind of offer like a little bit of perspective in terms of where things have come from. And yeah, Street Fighter 4, let's just go back, right? Hold on a second. I'm going to use my own visual examples. 7 years ago, yeah. Let's go before we have even this stuff. Like, let's go way back in the day. So Street Fighter 4, right? So yeah, I really enjoyed this game too, right? And I'm only going to use the perspective. I don't even think comparing to like Third Strike is apt because it's kind of like an ancient game. Like it's really old. The amount of time that I spent with Street Fighter 4 sort of like predates the internet era in many ways, at least like the social media era. Yeah, obviously I like Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, but it is a very different game than all of the others. So I like Street Fighter 3, but you know, that comes with a lot of caveats. I don't think the game's absolutely perfect, and it is very much like a not Street Fighter game in many ways, but that's the thing you kind of learn is that most of these Street Fighter games are always going to be eternally different. They're always going to try to do different things. So Street Fighter 4 is like the first one where you have the internet and you get some comparisons of where things go. And yeah, the launch of Street Fighter 4, everyone's gassing it up and it's great. It has a lot of problems, but this game came after a long period of disparity where we had nothing. So most people give it kind of a pass, at least at the start, because you just had nothing else. Like you didn't have any other, you had very few other 2D fighting games outside of like BlazBlue and stuff like that. Ultimately, when I think of Street Fighter 4, I mostly think of that it's like, I'm grateful for this game's existence. But at the same point, there was huge problems with Street Fighter 4, huge problems. And Daigo historically has also talked about it in his grievances with the game. This game rewards you not engaging, right? This game specifically rewards the player that does not engage most of the time. So it's mostly like a waiting game. And that can be kind of like just frustrating and naturally weird to watch. At the end of Street Fighter 4's life cycle, everyone big hated the game. And I don't even think I need to remind people at the end of like Ultra Street Fighter 4 how bad it truly was. The characters that were added to Ultra Street Fighter 4 literally ruined the game. And some of the mechanical changes that happened at the end of this game were absolutely terrible. It wasn't just Elena, it was also Relento. It was also like the speed of the game, how things changed. The most accepted period for Street Fighter 4 was definitely Super. Super SF4, most people were happy with it and liked the changes and liked the speed changes, but once Arcade Edition came around, once 2012 came around, that was the Yin and Yang era, it was donezo, dude. Like, people hated this game at that point, and people hated it even more by the end, you know? But, you know, for me personally, I enjoyed the end of it. I like the focus attack and stuff like that. And then obviously Street Fighter 5 comes out. Everybody is ready and willing to drop this game like it is an absolute bad habit. Like the amount of people that absolutely despised SF4, astronomical. Like everybody was so done with this. So Street Fighter V comes out and has a terrible launch. Straight up, a terrible launch. I did not particularly ever vibe with Street Fighter V until a bit later. And to give like the game a little bit of credit, it took some time for SF5 to get to a spot where I was like comfortable with it at all. But I'm not kidding you, this would be like 6 years. And most people, like just in general, didn't gel with Street Fighter V because of the lack of content. I didn't gel with it because the game was disgustingly boring. That would change later on. But still, there's a problem with SF5 just in general as a game. Normals were awful. Like, low forwards and buttons on many characters just were absolutely terrible. Every character felt like they were stumpy. The characters had huge feet and huge hands, but they could not reach for anything. And it was like, dude, it just felt terrible. Outside of that, the game was rather homogenous for like the longest period of time. Every character did like the same combo, like down medium into this thing, or, you know, some sort of extension therein. And then the V-trigger cancel, like everyone's gonna do sweep into V-trigger, like make that thing safe and just move into the next thing, like yada, yada, yada. There was a lot of that kind of stuff constantly throughout the whole game. Not enough freedom. Not just not enough freedom, the characters felt weirdly stifled. The most bare bones versions that characters would ever have. And it was like, oh man, like this is rough. Like what characters could do was so limited. The room for you to be creative in any way was almost non-existent. You just kind of had to play the game the way it wanted to be played. At least, you know, in later games like Street Fighter 6, you gotta understand what SF6 is. SF6 is a direct answer to Street Fighter 5. It's just an answer. Most of the things that kind of worked in Street Fighter 5, they kept in Street Fighter 6, but they directly addressed all of the things that didn't work, which I think is interesting. It's almost like Street Fighter 6 isn't exactly a brand new game than Street Fighter 5. It's almost Street Fighter 5, but fixed in many ways. My issue with Street Fighter 5 is that the game didn't get interesting at all, really, until the final seasons. I'd get some characters that I liked every once in a while, and the game would be kind of a bit more interesting when characters like G sort of came out. To be real, dude, like even competition-wise, you had to wait until like the final season when like Akira and Oro and even Rose, like really interesting characters, started to show up and did some pretty cool stuff. And now we got Street Fighter 6, and like I said, it's a direct answer to Street Fighter 5. I am not surprised if people are talking about the comparison of Street Fighter 6 to Street Fighter 5 and saying that they like Street Fighter 5 more now after playing so much Street Fighter 6. You know what? I think you're probably gonna really enjoy Street Fighter 5 if you go back to it. I think you will. But ultimately, you're gonna be bored to tears. I think you're gonna be reminded by how much stuff this game was missing, especially on characters in comparison to the new game. And granted, you know, the strike throw aspect is almost identical, dude. Like the way you like open people up and effectively shimmy and move in and out of range of throws and all that kind of stuff almost is literally one-to-one in this game in comparison to Street Fighter 6, because it's built almost as a sequel to Street Fighter 5. So that's not particularly a bad thing, because once again, Street Fighter 6 is a game that's going to force engagement, to focus on engagement, to allow that stuff to happen that way. The reason why there's people hating in Street Fighter 6 especially, and here's where my argument boils down, and I was talking about it earlier. Right now, there's almost an incentive in social media and career building YouTube making around like discourse, right? There's almost an incentive to make a video that is about a hot topic or something like that, or that is about a hot take in some way, and really try to go against the grain of what is widely very popular and has sold ridiculously well and has been received ridiculously well, and say something that is like the opposite. Does it mean that what they're feeling isn't true? No, bro. What you're feeling is absolutely true. I genuinely agree that some people are like, yeah, dude, this Street Fighter 6 stuff sucks, or this Tekken 8 stuff sucks. I just want to go back. I believe you. I don't think you're lying. But I think the eccentricity, being very eccentric about it and trying to effectively build an audience around like convincing people, that is what gets me. Because truly, if you did not like Street Fighter 6 and you like Street Fighter 4 and you like Street Fighter 5 or you like previous fighting games, guess what a normal person does? They stop playing the new game and they just go play the old game. The old games still work, dude. Street Fighter 4 has rollback netcode, like made by fans. Street Fighter 5, albeit has functioning netcode, but not great. But people still will go and play it. You'll still find people playing Street Fighter 5 on PC and PlayStation, 100%. You could just go and start building that community. But the fact is, a lot of the argument, I'm not saying any individual's responsible for this, but much of the argument coming from is people trying to rile up an audience with a hot take that is going to pit one audience against the other. Like straight up. We're just going to say that this thing is bad, this thing is good. Also, what I think is happening is that we're in an era where most content creators are in their first season. I'll just say that. A lot of content creation right now from people that are talking heads, like big figureheads, me included, have this to say about it because the content for these games is effectively dried out a little bit. But, you know, there's a reason behind that. That happens to every single fighting game, dude. Very few fighting games are going to last the entirety of its existence and be a content, I'd say, spring of bountiful plentiness that'll always get you viewers and viewership. That is not going to happen, man. That very few fighting games are like that. Some old Mortal Kombats are that way. Dragon Ball FighterZ was that way to a degree. Marvel vs. Capcom games can be that way for me to an extent, even KI. But the majority of them, your stuff is going to dry out. So people start looking at that. They see bad viewership. They wonder why no one was interested. And they go back and they play another game. I've been doing this for 10 years, man. Straight up. I've realized this, that you can't, even playing the new thing will not last forever. You have to go back and play some old things, and you almost build an appreciation towards new things when you play the old thing and you realize how messed up it was. So I think that's what's happening right now. And the issue is people look at that as like, oh, you know, that means this game sucks if people are going back and playing the old thing. To be real, as content creators, you have to find a way to make your content engaging and interesting. And right now, like I said, a lot of the content creators are no longer, that were tournament heads before, are maybe no longer tournament heads, or mostly have become just creators at this point, and they're having to learn that. You will not be able to farm one game forever. You can't. So do I think you should go back and play older games? I think you should, but I think it's like, yeah, go back and play older games, and then ultimately, you know, you'll come to the realization that you're either going to love the old thing and just stick with playing it, or realize that, oh, there's a lot of good stuff in the old game that you like, but there's also so many fixes in the new game. Ultimately speaking, I think there's a lot of things going on right now with content creation in general, and people that have played Tekken 7, got introduced to Tekken 7, and then have to play Tekken 8, or got introduced to Street Fighter 5, you're always going to glaze the game that you had the most success and time in, straight up. You're always going to hard glaze that game for the rest of your life. And you're going to hold up the rest of the game to that standard. And you're never going to get a game that matches that standard for you. And I can personally say that if you are one of those people, just to try to stop. Because go back and just play your old game, and trust me, you'll find plenty of things that'll deeply piss you off, right? Every fighting game gets to a point where it's like super screwed up at a hard level, at a high level, and you're going to get like upset with it and then realize that you want to change. I think it's also the fact that people are just playing the exact same one thing too much. And now that we're seeing so many content creators and so many people effectively playing games professionally now, in the past 5 years more than ever before, we're seeing people burning out really hard. And then I'm actually surprised that, hey, I was getting people that were asking me when Street Fighter 6 was out, like 3 months later, I was playing Third Strike. They're like, oh, you're playing Third Strike. That means Street Fighter 6 is bad. I'm just like, no, I play all of these games. Like, I'll play some more than others, but I play all of them. I'll go back and play Alpha 2. That's the whole idea, man, is that you have to find, like, there's good stuff in the old things and there's good stuff in the new things. And that doesn't make the new thing necessarily bad. It's just that we're allowed to play multiple games, dude. This is why most people engage with this stuff. It's okay to do most things, and guess what? Your audience is probably gonna like you for it. Straight up, dude. Your audience will probably enjoy the fact that there is some variety in this. And the thing that's going to happen now, I guarantee you, is that some of the people that are content creators are going to be making Street Fighter V videos, and it's going to seem like Street Fighter V is great because they're having fun and they're whooping ass and yada, yada, yada. Sure. Okay. That's going to happen. But they will not want to continue playing that game. Like, if they just put a little bit of time into it and it's like a week later, they're going to find so many issues with that game and effectively be reminded by why it sucks and why we wanted to get the hell away from it. Because that's going to happen to almost any game. Almost any game. The problem is that the majority of Street Fighter V's life was actually really crappy. To be real. The game was a legit slog. And kind of represents the worst of this era of fighting games that were very limited. Fighting games that were trying to take away tools from players. And that's something that I don't want to go back to, man. It's something I'm like, no, I don't want to go back to this. This is not, like, we're going to focus the game so hard into strike throw, focus the game so hard only into, like, footsies and stuff, and that's it. It was not fun. And it was like, I get why you're reminded that you would love it so much, but to be real, man, like, there were reasons people did not like the gameplay of this game. And the same thing happened to the end of Street Fighter 4, just because people played the game too much. All the things I'm talking about apply directly to Tekken, right? Everything I'm mentioning right now can also directly be applied to Tekken and that game and how it's being approached right now from an audience. I'm not doubting what these dudes are saying. I'm not doubting the fact that some people want to go back and play the old stuff. All I'm saying is that you should just do it. You should just go and play it and have fun with it and make content around it. Just do it. You don't have to also throw one thing under the bus, like take a break, dude. In fact, you'll find that that's significantly healthier. If all your experience is jumping onto a game and not having fun, then what are you doing, man? You've played it too much. Actually have played it too much.